Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Thursday, December 13th, special commission meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo,
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso,
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy,
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson. Here. Thank you.
If everyone would please rise for the pledge, led by Commissioner Hardy. Additions, deletions, reordering.
Oh, yes, Madam Mayor. Unfortunately, I made a mistake, and I thought that I should have put public participation of non-agenda items on the meeting, and I wasn't, but then I edited it. And so I think if anyone wants to speak and say Merry Christmas, we should allow it for 3 minutes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So that is to be added to,
It's just under, it's, I made it 5A. It's public participation of non-agenda items. in
And
case
consent
anyone
agenda
wants to
items.
speak.
and consent agenda items as well.
And consent agenda, but yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor state so by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to our public participation of non-agenda items and consent agenda items. Are there any cards?
Yeah, there's some cards. And there's some more. Hey, thank you. Not agendaed.
Okay. Ramsey Stevens, followed by Richard Garcia.
Good evening, Your Honors. My name is Ramsey Stevens, and I live at 618 South K Street. And I'd like to first congratulate and thank you all for securing a very competitive power purchase agreement for all of us for the utility. It's a big win for all of us if you haven't read it. And secondly, I'd like to note that the procurement process by which you did this would not have been possible without the EUAB. Moreover, this is the second time this year that the EUAB has been materially involved in securing savings and protections for us in contractual negotiations. So I hope you will take this all into account when determining what to do with the EUAB. I think I can also safely say that beyond the EUAB's track record, oversight and stakeholdership are good things. And I hope you will really take that to heart as we go forward here. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Richard Garcia.
Richard Garcia, 720 South Palm Way. I didn't have time to get a name badge, so I went to one of our commercial landlords on Lake Avenue there, and they hooked me up with this. If you get what I'm saying. I'm here to announce my candidacy for District 4 Commission. I'm running against my good friend, the incumbent Herman Robinson, along with Tom Copeland and William Joseph, of course. And the campaign, as far as I'm concerned, is going to be based on a couple of things: issues, policy, and what's good for the city. Nothing that's going to be controversial. I don't believe that we should be speaking about things that aren't in our control. Gun control, gerrymandering, things like that. I feel we spend far too much time talking about these things. And I think we need to concentrate on what's best for the city of Lake Worth. I'll be speaking a little bit again about the name change and how I feel we should go about it properly, dealing with the Postal Service and what have you. And I'll be lobbying very hard during my campaign against that name change. I feel, I'll be speaking about it in a couple of minutes anyway. So here I am, announcing my candidacy. I look forward to working with you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
Seeing there are none, we'll move on to public hearing 6A. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2018-18 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, calling for a referendum of qualified electors of the City of Lake Worth to be held on March 12, 2019, as to whether Article 1, Section 1 of the City of Lake Worth Charter shall be amended to change the name of the city from the City of Lake Worth to the City of Lake Worth Beach, providing for notice and advertising of the referendum, providing for referendum canvassing, providing for severability, providing for codification, providing for repeal of all conflicting laws, providing for an effective date.
So moved. Seconded.
Any public comment cards?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
First public comment from Lynn Anderson, followed by Richard Garcia.
gosh, this is really close. Lynn Anderson, 2204 Lake Osborne Drive. The city takes a lot of pride in its historic district. You know, we've got these cute little restored cottages now. We have the Historic Resource Department. We have 6 local historic districts. And some of the structures are recognized by the National Register. History has been important to us. 22 years ago, the City Commission adopted an historic preservation ordinance. And that was to protect the city's historic built environment by instituting a design review process. And this is overseen by the Historic Resources Preservation Board, where some of our residents always are going in front of them. And they're getting approval on such things as roofs and windows. And they're very vehement about residents adhering to certain historic parameters there. 106 years ago, however, our city was incorporated and named Lake Worth. This is soon after our city was founded. The pioneers named our city. History is important. Why is this part of history being disregarded, tossed away? For some silly reasons, such as crime occurring in the suburbs? Every 6 or 10 years, somebody up here in the administration or on the dais puts something like this up for discussion. And now it's gotten really far where it passed the first reading. It's going to pass again tonight. It's going to go on the ballot and people are going to vote for it. And it's an emotional issue because you get the word beach and it's kind of a cutesy thing, you know, and we have a beach over there. But this city has been Lake Worth for 106 years. So I don't even know how it got this far, and I really would like to know who puts things on the agenda to begin with, because these kind of issues like this, I want to know who puts them on the agenda so I can be sure that I won't vote for that person again down the road. And I have a lot more to say about it. Is that all I get on it?
Sorry.
Thank you. Richard Garcia?
Madam Mayor, Richard Gossio again, 720 South Palm Way. I'm loving this gooseneck. I spoke about this the other night, and I'll speak about it again. There's a proper way to do this, and it's through the post office. It's redesignating the other 5 zip codes that contain Lake Worth. If you look at the EDDM website, which gives you all the carrier routes in the county for the post office, it clearly shows that 33461's secondary designation is the Village of Palm Springs, 63 is Green Acres, 62 is Lantana, Hypoluxo, Atlantis, and Lake Worth, and 67 and 49 are Wellington and Green Acres as well. And they can be designated to those. We can segregate ourselves from this problem by just having everyone's secondary designation be their primary. This all goes back to the Palm Beach Farms Company. When you buy land out there, you get a little cottage by the sea here. It was all Lake Worth at that time. And that's why it's still all being dumped on here. They have the designations there already. We have a valid argument, a valid reason to petition the Postal Service to do this. As I said the other night, we have 3 carrier routes here within 6-1 within the city. We can't redesignate 6-1 to Palm Springs until we change those 3 carrier routes to Lake Worth 33460. There's a process for that as well, and it has to do with distances of delivery from the 6-1 post office. As far as I can see, it's the one next to Home Depot all the way out on Lake Worth Road, there just before Military Trail, and from our post office here. To those 3 carrier routes that are along Lake Osborne Drive, we are averagely closer, if you average the 3 together, closer to those than they are from Palm Springs. There's that 4th one that's down there, but it's actually Lantana in the Lake Bass area. That's a Lantana area. So I would hope, I'm guessing it's not going to happen, that you would just take back and not do this. Go about it the right way. Let's petition the post office. Let's get ourselves ostracized or separated. 1 zip code for Lake Worth, and only 1 zip code is Lake Worth. You know, we should be defending our identity, not changing it. Thank you. And we're throwing 106 years of history and letting it wind up down at the lift station in Bryant Park. So let's just do that. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner comments? Is there a possibility to do that? What Mr. Garcia just suggested? Can you legally do that?
I would certainly find out more about it, but it sounds like it's something that we could certainly pursue. I'm not familiar with the petition process he spoke of, but we could look into it.
Has the city staff looked into it at all in their preparing for the name change?
No, Madam Mayor, we weren't instructed to go beyond putting this on the ballot, so it's something we could look at and explore further.
Commissioner Hardy?
Sure. I think that would be a very interesting thing to consider if the only reason we were doing this were to ostracize or separate or differentiate ourselves from suburban Lake Worth. That's one reason why we're doing this, not the only reason why we're doing this, right? The other reason why we're doing this is because we want to make sure that we are connected in the minds of people who are thinking about coming to Palm Beach County with the beach. And that's an important reason. And, the other thing is, if you don't want the city to change its name, just don't vote for the city to change its name, right? So I just see this as us giving the voters an opportunity to vote on something. If you don't want the city to change its name, then don't vote that way. I think the majority of the people in the city will get what they want. And the other thing is, I actually live in a zip code that's not 60. I live in 61, and I also live in Lake Worth. So there are two cities in that zip code. Part of that is Palm Springs, part of that is Lake Worth, and part of that is unincorporated Palm Beach County. Just FYI. So.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. What Mr. Gercio proposes is interesting. However, I wish in all the years that the idea of changing the name has been bantered around, we had known about this years ago. The bottom line is there's a lot of ifs involved here, and we're dealing with the U.S. Postal Service, and there's no, we don't know what the timeline is for this or whatever, and time in some respects in some ways is of the essence here. We could kick this can down the road for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever it takes for the post office to finally, if they're going to move in that direction, to move in that direction. So, as Commissioner Hardy said, folks can, vote it straight up or down, but confusing the voters and telling them that there's a different way, that somehow the U.S. Postal Service is going to save the day and finally correct what should have been corrected probably 30 years ago, is really not, I don't think it's a good move for us to consider right now.
Okay. Commissioner Robinson?
Is this our one time to talk about just the name change, or can we wish everybody a happy holiday as well?
This is the discussion of the name change.
Okay, well, then we'll leave it up to the public. It's the first time, it was mentioned, 6 years ago, and the commission didn't favor it. This time, we were unified enough to at least give it to the citizens to decide, and that's democracy. And I'm good with that. And people can vote as they wish, which is what our country is built on. So, looking forward to it.
Okay. Any more comments? Anything? We've got a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to ordinance B, 2018-19, a second reading for ballot language to allow the sale of 501 Lake Avenue by referendum on March 12th. City Attorney, would you read the ordinance, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 2018-19 of the City of Lake Worth, Florida, calling for a referendum of the qualified electors of the City of Lake Worth to be held on March 12, 2019, as to whether the city shall be authorized to sell city property located at 501 Lake Avenue in downtown Lake Worth, with all proceeds used exclusively within downtown Lake Worth, providing for notice and advertising of the referendum, providing for referendum canvassing, providing for severability, providing for repeal of all conflicting laws, and providing for an effective date.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor, second.
Seconded.
Seconded by Commissioner Hardy. Do we have any public comment cards?
No, Madam Mayor.
Seeing there are none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to our consent agenda, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
First by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Hardy. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the Lake Worth Electric Utility, there are no presentations, but there is a consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business, item C1, agreement with Orlando Utilities Commission for power purchase agreement.
Motion to approve.
So moved by by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by the Vice Mayor. And then, Ed, did you have a presentation, or? Yes, we do. Okay.
I'll do it from over here, but I just want to make sure it comes up on the screen. Password?
Did he say aspirin?
Sound, isn't it?
I think it was password. It sounded like aspirin.
No, yes, this was to be.
It has an X in it.
Okay, the presentation is in the process of loading. Ed Liberty, Director of the Electric Utility, here to report on the proposed contract with Orlando Utilities Commission. There we go.
Go ahead in the chambers, please.
I'm not getting the same screen here that we have up there. And I don't have. Yes.
Yes.
I thought it was. Okay, so as an overview of the process that we've gone through for this, we did have a highly competitive process. We did have multiple providers that were invited to bid. The ones that were shortlisted for final presentations were OUC, which is Orlando Utilities Commission, Florida Power and Light, and the Florida Municipal Power Agency, FMPA. All of their proposals were competitive. They were all responsive to the request that we had put out in what we call the offering memorandum, and they were all well vetted. After going through the proposals in detail, including having UAB members take a look at the proposals in closed sessions, Q&A sessions with the proponents, we did ultimately select OUC as the finalist for negotiation. We brought that recommendation forward to this commission. The commission concurred, and we went into a negotiation with OUC. What we have finally, and we provide you in your packets, is a document which is not yet 100% complete, but it's substantially complete in terms of all of the business terms, and we're working with council to finalize it. But this proposed contract would yield reduced supply costs in terms of our wholesale power costs by an estimated $4.8 million annually. And I always put the caveat there that that, of course, depends on where natural gas prices go into the future, and then actually how much electricity we buy under this contract. So this contract is referred to as a supplemental contract because our primary electric needs come from units that we are owners in. That would be the St. Lucie plant, for example, and the Stanton plant, some portion from our own plant, very, very small piece, our own solar project. So this picks up that component which we're not already owners in. It works out to be about 50% of our energy supply. During this process, both staff and UAB members met, as I mentioned, with each entity in closed session. Those closed sessions included bidder presentations, opportunities for Q&A, and then review of confidential information, which took place on a one-on-one basis with UAB members that chose to do so in my office, including a Q&A with our consultants who were working with us to finalize this deal. Staff, myself and Brian King on my team, city attorney, Christy, who's present tonight, our city's energy consultant, and outside counsel have all been involved and collaborated to achieve a favorable outcome. We did also bring this to the UAB. They saw the document, the same document which you have tonight, and did review it. I know the various UAB members are here tonight. They did vote in favor of bringing this forward to the commission for approval, subject, of course, to final legal review. I can report that the OUC board, in turn, has approved it, subject to final legal review. They did that 2 nights ago on the 11th. What are some of the benefits of this agreement, some of the features of it? It does give us a considerable amount of control over our capacity purchases on a month-to-month basis, with the ability to tailor our capacity purchases by month. For those of us that were familiar with the contract that we're under right now for the next couple of weeks, that was basically a fixed amount of capacity that we bought for the entire 5-year term. And then if we didn't meet certain performance criteria on our combined cycle unit, it would then trigger a clause called supplemental payment. And we did wind up triggering that, so that cost us a substantial amount of money for the 2018 calendar year under the current contract with OUC. However, to OUC's credit, they did rebate a portion of that as a part of their proposal, and they began refunding us payments ahead of actually signing this contract, which is proposed. So they've been a very good partner in that respect, and they started those reductions in payments basically on October 1. That was on the penalty piece, if you will, of the supplemental piece that we had triggered.
What again was the total of the penalty piece again?
Was approximately $2.8 to $3.2 million, about $850,000 per quarter in that range, $830,000 to $850,000 per quarter. It was as per the contract that was negotiated, so it wasn't something that they snuck up on us with later on. It was all in plain English in the contract.
And what is the
it was
portion again
unfortunately
of the refund?
1 quarter of that, 1 quarter, 3 months.
Okay.
So approximately $850,000 has begun coming back to us effective October 1. So we greatly appreciate that. Helps the cash flow, helps the rebuild the fund balance. So the proposed methodology under this new contract is going to allow us to actively manage our capacity purchases on an annual basis, and then to adjust those on a month-to-month basis going forward. So we'll be able to tailor the amount of capacity that we want to buy into the contract based on how the city grows and how our own units perform. So it allows us with some flexibility to do that. The anticipated savings reflect both reductions in capacity costs and energy charges. And one of the reasons the capacity costs are lower is A, it's a very competitive process that we had, and B, the market is significantly overbuilt, meaning many of the large energy suppliers in the state have more capacity on their books right now than they need, and they're competing to sell that to others. And we did benefit from that. The energy cost, the energy component, we were able to negotiate basically a formula, which I can't disclose the details of because it's confidential, the actual numbers that are used in the formula. It's a trade secret to OUC. But it basically multiplies fuel cost times a unit efficiency, which is significantly lower than our current plant efficiency or anything that we could reasonably build at that site. So we'll have our future energy cost under this contract tied to natural gas pricing. We'll be able to look at the published natural gas prices and multiply it times this rate, work it through the formula, and calculate what our price will be. So from an audit perspective, it'll be a much easier contract to audit. And I should also mention, by the way, that our audit of the prior billings under the OUC contract, a sample of billings that was performed, proved to be correct. There was nothing happening improper in the billing at all. So this will be even easier to audit going forward. Other important features, it does allow us to grow as a city in terms of our electric demand or capacity that we need, but also in our total electric sales. So there's a latitude there for us to continue to grow. And for example, if it was this year, we saw that in October, November, September, we had some increases because it was rather warm. A lot of air conditioning was running at a time of year when we thought it would taper off, and sales were up a little bit, so that's always helpful. Get more sales over fixed costs, that's always good. And that happened across the state, not just here at Lake Worth. Under this contract, we retain the ability to replace and add generation. So if we wanted to add more generation to our plant, which we're not planning for at the moment, we don't contemplate that yet. But if we wanted to add more renewable generation, which we are considering, we could do that under this contract. There's nothing that preempts us from doing that. Another important feature of this is that under this agreement, 90%, because of the fuel mix that OUC uses for this transaction, 90% of the energy that they supply us in this agreement will come from natural gas fueled plants. So that pricing will be tied to natural gas, will be considered to have come from natural gas. So that'll give us what I refer to as a market basket of fuels that make up our generation portfolio, natural gas being a substantial part of it, but also a piece of nuclear and a piece of coal. So we have a nice balance in our portfolio, as well as solar. So as soon as we have our own solar, it gives us about 0.5% or so of our total needs. But as soon as the FMPA solar project comes online, anticipated for July of 2020, That would take us up to about 6%, 5.5% to 6.5% in that range. And we'd have the ability to go even higher under this agreement if we buy into or buy more power from other solar projects. I think you have the package, the staff report in front of you, and I'll open it up for any questions that commissioners may have.
Vice Mayor.
Ed, can you mention, I was at your last meeting, but for the public record, can you mention the ability for either party to get out of the contract and how that works? And then also the length of this contract that we're looking at tonight?
The overall contract has a term of 7 years, and we evaluated all the proposals based on 3, 5, and 7-year terms. This contract that we're going for has an overall term of 7 years. However, there are a number of off-ramps, if you will. The first 4 years are locked in. We then have the option to take the 5th and 6th year at our choice, and then the 7th year, we have the option together with OUC to have a 7th year. So it gives us the ability to exit if we want to. If some things change in the marketplace where we think there's an advantage, or our situation changes and we need to get out or want to get out to go do something better or different, we'll be able to do that starting at the end of the 4th year, as soon as the end of the 4th year.
Commissioner Robinson?
That was one of my questions on the length of this contract. What, for the public, what other contracts are we in a lengthy term with?
We have ownership interest in the St. Lucie power plant, which would go on for as long as the nuclear fusion continues to take place in that unit, for as long as it goes.
Well, is that a contract open-ended that we can't get out of, or? I mean,
Well, we're a part owner in the plant, so I don't know the exact details of how we would exit. I assume we would have to sell our share, but we're a part owner in that plant. A part owner in the sense that we're participants in the FMPA St. Lucie project. So the FMPA St. Lucie project owns a piece of the plant, and we're a member of that project. So it's an inferred ownership interest, and if you will, we have a generation entitlement from that unit. That's
They have a
good for the life of the
lifetime,
unit.
though, right?
Yes, that's
What-
my understanding. Excuse me?
I mean, the plants have a lifetime.
Yes, they do. It's difficult to predict the lifetime because what's typical with nuclear units is when they get to, let's say, 5 to 10 years of the end of their life, many of the nuclear operators in the country apply to extend their licenses because they've upgraded their plants and made enhancements to them, and they extend the licenses to go into the future. Off the top of my head, I don't know what FPL has done with the life expectancy of the St. Lucie plant, but it's not unusual for companies that look to extend the life of the plant.
And it's how old now?
I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know.
Okay, and that's the only other long-time commitment? that-
No, not at all. No, we are also, in a similar fashion through FMPA, we're also participants in the Stanton 1 coal-fired unit. We have about a 10 megawatt entitlement in that unit. It's very rough numbers, around 380 to 400 megawatt project, I believe, and we're 10 megawatt entitlement from that. There's no retirement published for that unit right now. By the way, the investor-owned utilities publish what's called the 10-year site plan. So each year they forecast forward the next 10 years of what their generation plant is expected to do and how they're going to meet their load. So neither the St. Lucie plant nor the coal unit at the Stanton unit OUC are scheduled for retirement in the next 10 years. They go beyond that. In addition to that, we have our own solar project, which we're owners in, and which we actually have title to. We own that. And then we have a contract under the FMPA solar project. We have what's called a power purchase agreement to purchase 10 megawatts of power from that project over a 20-year period starting July of 2020.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hardy?
Thank you. Ed, could you talk about the active management piece and why we should be excited about that, and what we potentially gain from it, and what are the risks involved if we don't get the peak load forecasts right?
Good question. So what happens under this contract, what would happen is by June 1 of each year, we would forecast the following calendar year's peak by month. And we think of the month as really, most of us think of a month as 29, 28, 30, or 31 days. It's really 740 plus billable hours, discrete hourly periods. And we have to then forecast what the peak would be in any one of those hours. We're looking to understand what the maximum would be in any one month. So using our detailed history of what our peaks have been in every hour going back numbers of years, we're able to forecast what the highest high would be and what the lowest high would be, if you will. And then we take a look on a running basis, how are we doing relative to history? Are we selling more product? Are we hitting higher peaks? Are we seeing load shrink? So that is going to be set by June 1 of each year for the following year. By active management, we mean under the contract, by the first of the prior month during the year in which this is occurring, we have the ability to make an adjustment and reforecast, call an audible, and make a change.
And that's different from the way that we're currently doing things.
That's correct.
Right.
Currently, we're locked in at one amount for the period of the contract, and we can't change it. Under the proposed contract, we'll be able to make those changes. So we'll be watching that closely. However, we also did, in the agreement, OUC worked with us to basically give us a bandwidth, so we don't have to hit it square on. We can be slightly under and be okay without issue.
So we can get it a little bit wrong,
We
by
can-
about 5% either direction?
About 5 megawatts, I believe.
Okay. Out of how many?
Normally, we could be minimum of 25 during the summer months. It could be higher than that. We could be in range of 40 to 50 or 60, depending on the season and the status of our own units.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business 2. Task order number 2 with Power Engineers for professional electric transmission and generation options for a
So moved.
proposed second 138 transmission tie line.
Seconded.
Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Hardy. Any public comment cards?
No, Madam
Seeing
Mayor.
there are none, all those in favor state so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. And a contract agreement with the Davy Tree Expert Company for utility easement right-of-way. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Moved by the Vice Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Hardy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. On behalf of the commission, everyone have a very happy, healthy, and safe holiday season. God bless you all.
Thank you.